With us here on Morning at NTV, the Easter Monday edition. I know it's the last day of the festivities and tomorrow you'll get back into the hula balas, but we also know that among the many conversations you've had with your siblings, with your relatives, with your friends in these communal engagements that you've been having over the festive season, I know that in one way or another you were shocked by news that either your friend or your cousin was struggling with something, or they were having mental health issues, or they were dealing with substance abuse, and this is something that you didn't know, and you're wondering how can you actually address some of these issues with them. Well, Morning at NTV is here to help you and guide you with the answers that you can actually adopt for yourselves on an individual level and a community level. I am Priscilla, Regina, Naluga, and you are most welcome. Now, today we get to dive into a topic that affects millions of people across the world. And here in Uganda, it's becoming an increasing urgent issue. I know that you've been watching us all through last week, and we've been running a series on drugs and universities. And it's opened up a lot of our eyes as a community, as people, and of course looking at our young youth, how they are easily and comfortably dealing with drugs and substance abuse in universities. Now, if that is happening at university level, the question is what is happening in the other levels of education and other communities. So from alcohol to illicit drugs, addiction is continuing to challenge individuals, it's continuing to challenge families, and of course the entire country. But the road to recovery does not have to be walked alone. Joining me this morning to help us shine more light on this and find solutions and strategies that can be effective from an individual level to a national level. To my extreme left, I have Dr. Joshua King. Good morning to you.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. How have you had Uganda? What's been your experience with Uganda?
I have loved being in Uganda. I've been surrounded by warmth and love. It's been so welcoming. I really have been blown away by the people I've met and the experiences I've had.
Okay. We do have Miss Shelana. Simone, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm enjoying Uganda and the hospitality of the people, enjoying the culture.
What's been your best food?
Oh, everything.
Variety.
Everything. Variety is the spice of life. I enjoy everything. I particularly enjoy the groundnut sauce that you guys eat with your national dish, which is the bananas at matoke that's cooked in the banana leaf. Delicious.
All right, Dr. Jarrell Myers, is your story any different from theirs, your experience of Uganda?
No, it's actually very similar between the wonderful people that you all have here, the culture that is so rich and diverse, and I'll be honest, the food has been absolutely amazing. I'm originally from Jamaica, and so this feels like being back home.
Right. All right, all my three friends here are from Your Ali Foundation. This is an organization that is doing remarkable work here in Uganda. They are offering support, education, and practical solutions to those that are affected by substance abuse disorders as well as mental health challenges. Now, when we look at the statistics, when we look at alcohol consumption in Uganda, we stand at 23.3% for adolescents in Uganda that are using alcohol. Regular drinking is prevalent among people and children that are 18 to 25, 27, and then it's highest among men versus women. When we look at the tobacco use in our country, it stands at 59% for adults who are smoking cigarettes and 15% for adolescents using tobacco products. Now, when we step away from that and look into mental health, 30% of Ugandans are being affected by mental health disorders, equating to approximately 14 million individuals. 68% of rural Ugandans report experiencing anxiety, and with a significant number of school-going children affected by depression. I think we've been seeing those stories of children taking their lives in school and just this year. And then anxiety disorders related to gender-based violence have also increased by 47.4%, highlighting the impact of societal issues on mental well-being. So, of course, these figures are highlighting a widespread nature of substance abuse and mental health challenges, especially amongst our young people, but they must be addressed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, given the statistics that are before us that we deal with as a country, let's talk about substance abuse and mental health and what they are, especially on individual, family, and community level. I'll start with you, Dr. King.
Substance abuse is actually impacted completely by what's going on for somebody mental health wise and by their community. And so what we are trying to address is all of those combined. And so the programs that we have, both the Invitation to Change program that we're working with your ally and the work that Shalana is doing with their trainings, is meant to address both at the same time. We're here working with families, with individuals who are going to be able to work with and help families to be able to say, how can you in your community come back and use evidence-based scientific approaches to be able to help shift somebody's substance use by also recognizing what's going on with them mental health-wise.
Okay, all right. Shalana, from your experience with working with different communities, what have you realized as the growing factors contributing to mental health challenges?
I think the very state of the world is contributing to all of our increase in mental health issues. But if you look primarily at the population that we're focused on, when it's school age kids from the age of like 7 all the way up to when they're exiting high school, it's the academic pressures, systemic issues happening within families, whether it's domestic violence, interpersonal violence, and also undiagnosed mental health that runs within families. People minimize the fact that a lot of mental illness is organic, such as schizophrenia and bipolar. These are amplified when you add additional stressors on and they go untreated. Culturally, because I'm Guyanese, like Jarrell, I'm also Caribbean, in our community, and as I've been in Uganda for the last week, you see that a lot of symptoms are minimized, and cultural implications also play into a person's ability to go and seek treatment.
All right. Dr. Jarrell, from where you're seated, when all is said and done, let's look at the other side. What is the impact of substance abuse and mental health challenges on families, on communities, and on even nations?
That's a great question. So I think the issue is that typically when it comes to people who are struggling with substances, the focus is on them as individuals. And that makes sense, right? Families want to ensure that their loved ones are taken care of. Communities want to make sure that you have people who can continue to contribute, that they're able to effectively be part of the workforce and be part of the community in the many different ways that we serve. The issue is that when someone is struggling with a substance, we focus primarily on that individual and not on the effects of the entire community, whether that's just the family members, the friends, or the entire community that they're playing a role in. And so because that gets neglected, the focus continues to be on how do we help this individual stop using, as opposed to what are the things that we need to do as an environment, as a community, to support this individual and to ensure that they have the tools and skills that they need in order to continue to be a prospering member of this society, but that they continue to feel supported by their communities. Oftentimes they're taken out of their communities, oftentimes they're shunned, oftentimes they're judged as morally deficient, and the issue is that it's not that that is the case, but much more so that these individuals are struggling and have learned to use substances as a means of coping. What we're hoping to do with the Invitation to Change model that we've been implementing here is to help, one, families recognize and realize that their loved one isn't morally corrupt.
Right. Before we get into the nitty-gritties of that, you know, you've talked about the fact that we're as focused on the individuals and we forget the community. And it triggered me to think, okay, if my brother is on a substance and they're abusing it, there'll be stigma right from the family. Now, I might have to shield my brother because they're my brother. I have to love them. But then I'm thinking about it in the community. If they see my brother in the community, the other family heads will say, stay away from that boy because he's using drugs. And therefore, he'll have no friendships formulated. He'll be an island of himself, and then he will now be using more as a way of dealing with all the stress and pressure of not being wanted in society. And that is all castigated by the community, which then brings us to a place of wanting to understand your early foundation. Where does it fit in all of these, having shed light? Dr. King.
You raised several good points, right? Number one is the idea of shame and blame and stigma. So all of the stigma that is there about substance use that says, oh, you have a problem, and that it's not just you who has a problem. right? The whole family has a problem. Oh, your parents had a problem because they raised you poorly. Oh, the community didn't take care of you. So now everyone feels bad, and everyone is feeling isolated. And so they don't go out and reach out for help. They don't say, please help us. They say, ooh, we have this, we better hide. And so we go underground and we don't get help. So that's the first piece that is really just important to understand. And so what we're trying to do is to make it above board and to reduce some of that stigma so that people can come out and say, I actually need help, and get the help and the support. Your ally has partnered with the CMC Foundation for Change, which brings the Invitation to Change approach, as a way to be able to bridge that gap, to be able to say, we're going to work with individuals who are going to be trained in this approach, who are going to be able to go into communities and say, actually, that's not the way that it works. That if an individual is struggling with substances, we need to reach out. If we say, you're off over here, we are encouraging them to continue to work, to use. Just like you had said, if they're totally isolated, they're going to reach back to alcohol because that becomes a coping skill. But if we embrace them and say, how do we actually bring you in? How do we get you connected to other things? How do we get you connected to a football team? How do we get you connected to a community group? How do we get you connected to church? That brings them in, and then those things start to compete with the substance use. And then that helps bring people out of substance use, out of isolation, and back into community.
Okay, all right. So now, Dr. Farrell, we can talk about that invitation to change model that you were earlier alluding to. What is it about?
That's a great question. So the Invitation to Change model is a model which was developed by our organization, the Center for Motivation and Change, with the aim of supporting families. So as I said earlier, the majority of people who are struggling with substances won't come and seek out services for whatever reason. We have evidence and scientific-based practices that we incorporate every day with the people that we work with. And so our thought process is, if we can get that information out into communities, providing family members, community leaders, whoever may have influence over this individual, providing them with these evidence-based practices, then what we're giving them the ability to do is empower themselves with tools and skills to support and help their loved one, while at the same time breaking down a lot of the stigma that's been there around what it means to be a substance user, and rebuilding connections within the family unit.
Okay, all right. Shelena, most organizations will come here and work with the individuals. They'll put them together and work with them. Yours is quite a unique one. Collaboration is a unique one, that you are focusing a lot on professionals, ensuring that you equip them with usable tools that they can then transmit to the people that they work with. Why is that model seen as a better alternative?
When you think about it, a teacher in Uganda has a classroom of roughly about 90 to 100 students. If we train one teacher or a school counselor, she now impacts each and every one of those kids, and they take the lessons and the skills that they learn home to their families. Those families share with other families. Thereby, the impact is greater. When you change the mindset and equip and our goal in the teachers and the professional training is to affect change on a cultural level, and also to provide sound clinical framework when it comes to treatment and addressing the issue of substance abuse and mental illness in elementary schools and also in the high school setting. The goal is to empower teachers so they can empower their students.
All right. Which profession groups are you working with currently in Uganda?
We have teachers from primary and high school. We also have school counselors, psychiatrists, and also social workers.
Okay. How long has the program been running, and what's been the response of these groups?
Well, the program, Your Ally Foundation, started about a year ago when the founder, Susan Wilkinson, came, and she just was invited to go to a school. And after doing a brief presentation to the body of students, she gave them her contact information. By the time she was able to reach back to Boston, she had 200 messages from students reaching out to her for additional supports around mental illness. So she decided to come back to Uganda and invited myself and about 3 other providers, different specialties, to come in to do this training. The goal of the training is to empower teachers, empower social workers to look at their community from a strength-based approach and how to treat the individuals utilizing the person and environment, not looking at your environment and your community as half full, but I mean not as half empty, but rather as half full, utilizing all of the natural skills and strengths that the Ugandan community already possess, and how do we amplify that?
All right. How many have you trained so far, and what has been the ripple effect of this one teacher to the 200 students?
We have 100. This is our first training. We have 100 professionals in our training. In the last week, we can see this, you know, you see the screws turning. The screws are turning because the language is changing. We also had Invitation to Change come in and also teach skills to our providers. And you see that when they're speaking, it's more strength-based. They're looking at their students, they're speaking about their students in a way that is different from when we first started. So our goal is that hopefully we will be back next year to continue to amplify the program and then utilize it to continue to affect change, not just in Kampala, but in rural areas as well.
Okay, Dr. King, this begs the question, why is the organization putting so much effort into Uganda?
Why wouldn't it put effort into Uganda? Uganda's wonderful.
Countries.
Uganda Susan's home. She was brought up here, she was educated here, she moved to the States. She comes back to Uganda frequently. Uganda continues to hold a special place in her heart. And I think it's also because Uganda is an emerging market. The reality is Uganda has a very young population. You have 47 million people. A lot of those individuals are between the age of 18 and 35. Majority of the professionals, out of the 100 that we started with, I think 75% of them are between the age of 20 and 30. Oh. You have a young population and young providers. If we can equip them with sound clinical principles and values, the change in terms of how Uganda views mental illness, it could be, I don't have the words, but it could be so impactful.
Okay, all right. Dr. Jarrell, we can have tools that we can come with to equip other communities with, but it begs also the question, what's been the response from the communities, from the professionals in adapting these tools, but also what are the underlying challenges that they have shared can actually hinder them from addressing the issues the way you believe can best handle mental health and substance abuse for our communities in Uganda?
Yes, that's a great question. So coming in, we had the expectation that we are bringing in this material, but that the material was developed in the United States, and that culturally that is different from the people of Uganda or any of the countries in this area, part of Africa. And so we relied on our expertise in bringing in this information, but as we've been working with the professionals here, we've relied on their expertise, their knowledge of the culture, their knowledge of what may work and what may not work for the individuals, and we've worked with them to develop a protocol that feels as if it will fit for each of the individual communities that they're coming from. So there's no expectation on our end that we know everything. It's much more so that we want to work with the community leaders and the professionals to ensure that what we are providing them with will fit within their communities. The goal is to ensure at the end of the day that when these trainers that we are training go back into their communities, they're taking with them skills and tools that feel like they'll be effective and be presented in such an effective way that it changes the way that people are thinking about mental health and about substance use disorders.
All right, Dr. King, you're a man of strategies. Let's talk strategies. And what are some of the strategies that you're actually deploying to be able to extend this information, not just to the groups of professionals, but also to individuals and aid families and communities in addressing these two issues? But also the other thing I would like to know, how are you structuring it in order for it to have the impact that you desire?
Sure. So there are two different levels that you're asking about, right? One is, how are we getting this information out to the world? So we're getting this information out to the world by, one, training professionals and training individuals who are community leaders. The Invitation to Change is created that it does not have to be, you don't have to have a degree, a higher level degree in order to use it. If you learn it, you can deploy it. And so we are training people who have learned it on how to deploy it even further so that they could go out into their communities. And one of the amazing things that that your ally has done has not reached out beyond just Uganda. We've brought in trainers from Uganda, from Zambia, from Kenya. So they're all here, and they're all taking this back to their communities so that they can now go and train people in their communities. So we're going to spread that out.
All right.
The second piece of what you were asking is, so what does it actually entail? And what it actually entails is a new way of being able to look at substance use and how to help people. And what we're looking at is shifting the ideas of understanding about how substance use comes up, changing your awareness of your own feelings about it, of what that might be like for the individual who you're trying to help, your loved one who might be suffering. And then actually giving them tools that say, and here are evidence-based tools that say, how do we help you change behaviors? From changing your own communication to using positive reinforcement skills to say, here are the behaviors I want to see more of those, and how do I get that? And even, how do we set limits? And how do we set limits in a way that feels like it's not going to get short-term change, right? I slap you on the wrist and say, don't do that, and you stop today, but then go back and do it tomorrow. We don't want that. We want to have long-term change. How do we set limits and set boundaries that are going to give maintainable long-term change?
Okay.
And so that's the invitation to change approach.
All right, let's talk about measurable outcomes, Shelana.
I think that the best way to measure outcomes when it comes to mental health, when it comes to substance abuse training, you have to take an evidence-based approach, whereas you have to give time to really gather data. I think the mere attendance, the 100 providers that took their time out during their Easter break to come, I think is a baseline. We can use that as a measurement to the level of commitment to the providers have in Uganda when it comes to addressing mental health. I think that's the starting point of it. And as we continue to come, we'll be able to really implement ways of measuring how effective has the program been in schools. I think the next step would be to visit schools to provide more direct care to students as we support the providers as well.
Okay, all right. I'm going to allow Dr. Jarrell to give us the closing remarks. What's the way forward, and especially for the case of the two subject matters, mental health and substance abuse in Uganda, what do you hope that through collaboration you are going to change the narrative in the country?
That's a great question. So on our end, what we are hoping to occur is that there is a shift in the general consciousness around what mental health and substance use mean. I think in many different communities, in many different countries, it has been shunned, it has been pushed aside. And what we are learning over time is that these are things that affect everyone, regardless of race, class, culture, or country. And that if we can help people to understand that, that these issues are not unique, and that these issues respond so much better to community and engagement, that we will see direct and valuable long-term changes in what could eventually become some sort of pandemic.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the work that you are doing for our young people here in Uganda. Now, these two issues must be addressed as they're being done so on an individual level, on a community level. We hope that on a national level, some of these strategies can be adopted. That brings us to the end of this conversation. Thank you so much for being with us. Do stay